I'm happy, but I'm also kind of nervous because Kye is fast, really fast.
Engines roar, tires screech, and egos clash in this adrenaline-fueled street racing. At the No Prep Kings event, the stakes were sky high with a massive $40,000 cash prize on the line. Among the fierce competitors were two longtime rivals, Big Chief and Kye Kelly, both determined to outrace each other. As the green light flashed, anticipation mounted for the showdown between these titans of horsepower and skill. Who would emerge the champion in this high-stakes battle? Buckle up for this electrifying event as we unveil the ultimate champion of this season's highly anticipated race at No Prep Kings. Big Chief versus Kye Kelly to win $40,000 cash prize. It was another exciting night at the No Prep Kings drag racing event. The stakes were high, with a massive $40,000 cash prize on the line for the winner. All the top street racers had gathered, determined to take home the glory and the money. Among them were two heavy hitters, Big Chief and his longtime rival Kye Kelly. Big Chief, known for his small but mighty Pontiac, couldn't shake off the feeling that he was destined to face off against Kye that night. The two had a long history on the streets, with Kye getting the better of Big Chief 3 times out of 3 races. But at the track, the tables were turned. Big Chief had beaten Kye twice, including that epic $660,000 score at Bristol a few years back. As Big Chief pulled up to the line for the semi-finals, he couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Kye's name flash up as his opponent. He knew he was going to race Kye at some point during the night, he thought to himself, saying, "I don't know, one of those feelings you just know it." Kye and Big Chief's wife, Liz, pulled up beside him. "Kye is fast, really fast," Big Chief told Liz. "He's dangerous, you know what I mean? He's dangerous." Liz could sense the nerves, but encouraged her husband. That he got this, telling him to just do his thing like he always does. The tension was real as the two cars inched towards the line. Big Chief knew he had to nail the launch if he wanted any chance of beating the incredibly consistent Kye. When the lights flashed green, both cars burned the tarmac with a shower of smoke and noise. Big Chief wasn't joking when he said Kye was fast on the light. The second that green came on, Kye was gone, taking an incredible launch. But Big Chief was right there with him, clinging on for dear life. About halfway through the run, disaster struck Kye as his car started shaking violently. Meanwhile, Big Chief's little Pontiac was running like a dream. At the finish line, the race wasn't as close as everyone expected. Big Chief crossed the line well ahead of the hobbling Kye. As he looked over at the scoreboard, Big Chief still didn't know if he'd won. He expected Kye to have such a massive lead after that incredible launch. But when the numbers flashed up, it was clear Big Chief had taken an upset victory over his longtime rival. Kye didn't even try to take advantage of the jumpstart rules, instead sitting back and waiting for Big Chief to build a boost before taking the real race like a gangster. It was a drag race in the truest sense, and Big Chief's consistent little Pontiac had once again worked its magic. After the semi-final win, Big Chief's crew was buzzing. This little car just kept on surprising them with how well it was running at heights. With the adrenaline still pumping, they knew they had one more monster to slam before they could claim the $40,000 prize, the legendary Breer brothers from Virginia. The Breer brothers need no introduction in drag racing circles. They're true legends of the sport, holding records in just about every class imaginable with their exotic and incredibly powerful machines. At the No Prep Kings event, they had brought their wicked 200-mile-per-hour, 8-the-mile car, capable of effortlessly running those elite numbers. Big Chief knew he didn't have a 200-mile-per-hour car. His best was a measly 186-mile-per-hour, but he was confident that if he could get his little Pontiac up to that speed quickly, the Breer brothers' faster machine wouldn't be able to chase him down before the finish line. It was a tiny window, but one he was willing to go for with $40 grand on the line. As the two cars rolled up for the final, the atmosphere was electric. On the one side, you had the unstoppable Breer brothers machine. On the other, the unlikely Pontiac hero had already taken down Kye Kelly against the odds. Whenever Big Chief and a legendary team like the Breer brothers lined up, you knew you were in for something special. The Breer brothers weren't lacking confidence either. "He ain't gonna shake us," one of them said fiercely. "We're gonna put a tune-up in there. He's going to look at our tail lights. But Big Chief and his crew were just as fired up in the other lane. All right, guys, let's get this money like we stole something from our mums. Big Chief roared, revving the little Pontiac. After everything else this car had achieved, there was a real belief they could pull off one more underdog miracle. When the lights flashed green, both cars struck the ground with brutal force, clawing for traction. But it was Big Chief who was first off the line, taking an ever so slight advantage. The Pontiac shrieked up through the gears, headlights locked on that 186 miles per hour target it needed to hit. By the halfway point, it was starting to look very close between the two cars. The Pontiac was still fractionally ahead, but you could see that monster Brea Brothers machine slowly eating into the gap. It was going to be brutally tight at the stripe. Then, in an almost unbelievable moment, the little Pontiac held its lead through the tarmac, flashing across the finish line just in front of the charging Brea Brothers car. No one in the crowd could quite believe what they had just witnessed. Even the normally stoic Brea Brothers team looked shell-shocked. They had just been well and truly demolished by a much smaller and less powerful car. As for Big Chief, he was understandably losing his mind, taking off his helmet and roaring in triumph. After everything, the Kye Kelly win, the Brea Brothers challenge, and the relentless doubters, he had finally got the big $40,000 score. As Big Chief and his ecstatic crew celebrated wildly, the announcer grabbed him for a word, telling he just did the impossible here tonight. You came through 2 of the toughest rounds imaginable, and you're leaving here $40,000 richer, he said. Big Chief could barely contain his joy. It's unbelievable. I mean, who would have thought my little Pontiac could outrun those Brea Brothers missiles? We just didn't make any mistakes tonight. When you don't make mistakes, anything can happen in this sport. The announcer laughed and whipped out an envelope containing the $40,000 in cold hard cash. Well, Chief, I'm sure this will go a little way to paying for those Pontiac parts. Here's your $40,000 winner's check. You earned every cent of it tonight. Big Chief graciously accepted the money, grinning from ear to ear. At that moment, he was the king of the street racing world. And it was all thanks to that little big-hearted Pontiac. Pedal to the metal, engines roaring. This is no ordinary street race. It's an all-out war of pride, grudges, and paychecks worth hundreds of thousands. Strap in for the wildest rides of your life as we dive into the ruthless world of no-prep kings. Houston Street Racing Showdown for 440 grand and top points. It's a whole other world out there on the streets and back roads. Drivers are pushing their souped-up machines to the absolute limit, all for bragging rights and some serious cash prizes. We got teams like the 405 crew from Oklahoma City rolling deep. Murder Nova, Daddy Dave, Monza, Boost Edge. These dudes don't mess around. Then we got the Texas boys always trying to represent. Men like Chuck Seatsinger, Birdman, Kye Kelly, and Lizzie Musey bringing that southern heat. It's an all-out war between these crews. The rivalries run deep, with Oklahoma and Texas pride always on the line. The trash-talking and call-outs start weeks before the races even happen. The insults and challenges get thrown around like crazy. But when race day arrives, it's time to back up all that talk with some serious horsepower. These events attract the most souped-up street cars you've ever seen. Turbo setups, nitrous kits, monster engines, and rides that are built for one thing: brute force acceleration off the line. Safety second, speed first. That's how these guys play. The competitions are glorified street races on deserted back roads or rented out airstrips and racetracks. No prep surfaces mean the tires better be sticky and hook up hard from the jump. Guys are doing crazy burnout routines, burning off the old rubber to expose the fresh sticky underneath. The scenes are straight out of a Fast and Furious movie. Crowds of rowdy spectators, engines roaring and smoke everywhere. Then it's game time. 2 cars lined up, adrenaline pumping, just waiting for that other driver to make a mistake on the start. Green light drops and it's pedal to the freaking floor, tires shredding, engines screaming at the red line, the whole car shaking violently as they blast off toward the finish line a quarter mile away. Sometimes it's so close they have to use slow-motion replays to determine a winner. The competition format is pretty simple, single elimination tournament style. Lose and you're out, plain and simple. Rounds keep going from 32 cars to 16 to 8 to 4 until you get the final two battling it out for the main prize money. These guys will race 3, 4, 5 times in a single day, switching out motors and thrashing on their cars between each round just to keep chasing that cash. The stakes are unreal too. There's $40,000, $60,000, or even $100,000 for the big winners. Some serious life-changing money for a bunch of gearheads. But with those winnings come crazy costs too. Building and repairing these monster racing engines ain't cheap. Rods going through blocks, dropping transmissions, snapping axles. It's just the nature of the beast when you're pushing cars way beyond their limits constantly. But these dudes don't care. They live for that adrenaline rush of a close race and the thrill of taking home a fat stack of cash from an event win. That's what fuels the huge egos and ridiculous rivalries between teams and drivers too. When there's that much money and pride on the line, ego clashes are bound to happen. So that's just a taste of how insane these street racing events can get. Imagine the biggest, most turbo D-up street cars you can think of all lined up to do battle. Drivers are gambling huge chunks of their life savings on every race day, but maybe walk away with a $50,000 payday if things go their way. It's an adrenaline-filled, ego-fueled race atmosphere like nothing else out there. Just be glad these wild racers have a somewhat controlled environment to get this insanity out of their system at events like these. No need for them to be tearing up public roads and risking innocent lives. This is their world, a place where horsepower talks and the loudest, baddest engine reigns supreme. Buckle up, because this is just the start. The real race begins. These dudes aren't just out here racing for a single fat paycheck. They got their eyes on the real prize, that championship title, and the respect that comes with it. Every race throughout the season has a decent chunk of points up for grabs, usually 60 points for the winner, then decreasing amounts for the runner-up, semi-finalists, and so on. The more rounds you can battle through, the more points you rack up toward the overall season tally. Now, some drivers try to play it smart early on, just focusing on getting some points on the board each race. But the real ballers, they are not settling for crumbs. Guys like Ryan Martin, Kye Kelly, and Dave Akins come out swinging, determined to win every single event from the jump. Ryan's a beast when it comes to chasing points. He was the king in the last couple of seasons, just racking up wins and fat points hauls left and right. He'll call out anyone, anytime if he thinks he can get an edge. Guys like Chuck and Birdman give him plenty of shit for it, saying he's scared to race them straight up. He's just playing the points game smarter than anyone. The rest of the teams have caught on to Ryan's tricks. The 405 boys realized if they wanted to knock Martin off that pedestal, they had to play the team game better. Guys like Murder Nova and Daddy Dave started making strategic call-outs and doing whatever they could to avoid racing their teammates early and knocking each other out of points contention. On the Texas side, you have units like the Musi family doing the same thing. Kye and Lizzie are low-key two of the coldest point shoguns out there on the tracks. They'll cross-call and cross-line each other early if they have to, all to maximize their team's points potential. The other huge points period is what they call points and a half and double points at the last couple of events. The points payouts get turbocharged toward the end of the season. A win isn't worth 60 points anymore, it's 90 or even 120 points. You can see why those final few races are crucial for making or breaking a whole season's effort. Drivers who were chilling at 4th or 5th in the points all year suddenly got a shot to make a late surge for the title. Or you got unfortunate drivers like Jeff Lutz, who had a hell of a season going until a bad couple of races right before those double-up points. Events just completely knocked him out of contention. The intensity gets ramped up to another level once it hits those closing points races too. You have drivers making riskier calls, taking bigger chances on busted engines and untested tuning just to try and grab those huge point paydays. At the same time, you have hometown drivers getting a little overhyped, maybe making dumb decisions just for the sake of pleasing the local crowds. That's where you see some of the wildest shit go down, teammates accidentally taking each other out with dumb moves, or sometimes intentionally. You won't forget Mustang Mike calling out his teammate Kenny from the Mistress team. He admitted he just wanted to take Kenny out and steal his points. Egos and home turf pride completely go out the window once the championship is on the line. Guys get desperate, plain and simple. All kinds of shady call-out games, handicapping moves, and even flat-out cheating scandals trying to steal an edge. Then you have all the hurt feelings and rivalries that spill over from season to season because of that kind of shady business. The Burton and Birdman beef, Stevie and Chuck practically coming to blows every season, gets out of hand quickly. These simple smack-talking call-outs from months ago turn into score-settling missions by the time that final championship race rolls around. But that's all just build-up for the big finale, that double points championship race to decide the whole damn thing. Imagine the pressure of having an entire year's work riding on the potential 240-point swing. That's how reputations and legacies get forged in this gig. Perform on that day and cement yourself in the history books. Choke, and you might as well flush your whole damn season down the toilet. Whoever can handle that intense pressure best while also rolling out with a prepped hot rod is your champion. It's like the Hunger Games of street racing out there, a ruthless battle royale, until only one team is left standing with the target on their back. That championship tussle is so entertaining to watch unfold too. You have guys you thought were out of contention months ago suddenly making a miraculous late push, or the guy who led wire to wire finally crumbling dramatically under the pressure. Every year, it's pure insanity and drama, all the way up until the very last pass gets made. Grown-ass men crying tears of joy, fistfights breaking out, coolers getting punted. You never know what kind of chaos is going to unfold. But at the end of the mayhem, there's a lone driver who gets to hoist that championship belt over their head and call themselves top dog for the whole next year. Well, until the cycle starts all over again at least. So while it's awesome seeing these freaks trade straight-line runs and fat stacks of cash at every event, the real show is in watching them grind all season long for those coveted championship points. That's when the gloves come off, and you see how much grit and determination these teams have. Only the true worst of the badasses are left standing in the end. Let's see who crumbles and who rises to the occasion this season. After physical and mental wars, only one team emerges victorious to claim the other's prized race car. But was the price too high? Stay tuned for the dramatic conclusion to this can't-miss event. Domestic versus import drag race showdown. It was showtime at the drag strip for an epic best-of-5 throwdown between two badass teams, wide open throttle and Olympic armor coatings. The stakes were high as hell. Whichever squad came up short would be forcibly parting ways with their flagship race car, having to hand over the keys to the winning team. Neither side was keen on the idea of watching their prized possession driving off without them. This was about more than just bragging rights. It was a twisted game of car punishment, where losers would feel the wrath. Lisa, the host from the wildly popular Pink's TV series, was running this circus. Her cousin Cale would be playing eye in the sky spotter at the finish line to ensure no shenanigans happened during the races. They also had two technical advisors suited up, Nate riding alongside wide open throttle and Charles keeping Olympic armor legit. For Olympic armor, their excitable leader Asian had been foaming at the mouth to get this challenge going for months now. The man practically leaped out of his shoes, raising his hand when Lisa issued an open call for someone to step up and race. On the other side, Lee was captaining the wide open throttle squad. While not quite as amped up as their opponent, Lee's team was still rabidly motivated to score this win. Their guy John would be handling all the intense negotiating for handicaps and race conditions, while Brandon was their designated wheelman. After all the insurance paperwork was signed and done, it was time to get down to brass tacks, figuring out the specifics for that opening race in this derby. Lisa asked if either team wanted to go inspect each other's cars first before the negotiating began. Asian's chief negotiator Big Chief only asked for 30 seconds to pop the hoods and look things over. He and his crew had been watching Wide Open's every move already, studying and game planning for this clash well in advance. As soon as they got a peek under the hood of Wide Open's Ford Mustang, Asian's whole pit started murmuring. Rather than some basic street car, Wide Open had prepped a wicked turbo monster Honda specifically for this competition. It was immediately clear they wouldn't be facing your ordinary grocery getter here. With both cars' specs laid out, it was time for the two lead negotiators, Big Chief and John from Wide Open, to start working towards a fair set of handicaps and conditions for that critical first race. John kicked things off with an aggressive opening ask, requesting a full 15-car length head start to try and offset the Honda's perceived power advantage. But Big Chief wasn't trying to hear that noise, only countering with a 10-car handicap for John's so-called race car. The back and forth was already getting heated before a single race had even happened. You could tell there would be no easy compromise here. These two parties were miles apart in their assessment of each car's performance potential. Eventually, after much negotiations that turned confrontational, they finally agreed to take the simplest route. Run that first race heads up with no handicaps at all. May the fastest car win fair and square, and then they would go from there. As the two race cars rolled up to the stage for the opening salvo, the tension was thicker than a Trump carpet. Both teams desperately wanted to seize that early mental advantage, especially with so much on the line. Any edge, no matter how small, could prove pivotal later on. You could have cut the intensity with a knife as Brandon in the Honda and Wide Open's driver staged up, bump boxes kissing the concrete. The crowds hushed, knowing how critical a fast start would be without any handicaps to fall back on. When the Christmas tree flickered green, the two cars erupted in a spectacular plume of smoke and vaporized rubber as both drivers went flat out from the second that light turned. Seconds later, they were already gone, disappearing into a haze as the furious acceleration shredded the racing surface. Down at the big end, Brandon was visibly pulling ahead in that turbo Honda right from the get-go. Olympic Armor's prep and tuning efforts were immediately on display as the raw torque simply overpowered Wide Open's combination on the leave. But to their credit, the Wide Open throttle Mustang driver never gave up the fight, keeping the accelerator matted and gaining ground in a hurry as the higher mile-per-hour speeds started leveling the playing field a touch. As they thundered across the finish line, Brandon's Honda nosed ahead by roughly half a car length. It wasn't a massive blowout, but the Turkish drilled had been licked from the jar. Olympic Armor had a measure of superior equipment in this fight compared to Wide Open's budget street-machined Stang. The big dog had the advantage right now, period. Those opening passes revealed a clear reality. Olympic Armor's race car was out front early with brute acceleration, but Wide Open's heavier Mustang could still play catch-up at the higher speeds. Neither car had a decisive advantage for a full quarter-mile blast. With the score sitting 1-0 in Olympic Armor's favor, the negotiation headed into the crucial second round as everyone caught their breath. Tensions were already sky-high since John had been spurned in his opening request for such a crazy handicap advantage off the trailer. This time around, John went fishing for a more moderate 15-car length head start on Wide Open throttle, saying that if they got out to that kind of lead, he was confident his driver could hang on to it and even set the series up. Big Chief again scoffed at the notion of dishing out such a gift, though, demanding no more than 10 car lengths max. Insults and accusations started flying across the negotiating table at this point. John insinuated Olympic Armor was blatantly sandbagging and detuning their Terra Honda to lull his squad into a false sense of overconfidence. He figured they must have been leaving gobs of raw horsepower untapped for strategic purposes later on. Not surprisingly, Chief vehemently denied those claims, firing back that they'd simply built a light, powerful race bike that Brandon knew how to pedal. Any sandbagging accusations were just delusional cries from a team getting outclassed by better preparation and superior equipment. Lee tried bringing some rationale into the talks, reminding everyone that his Wide Open team had 2 straight wins under their belt from this point forward. While the path looked narrow, there was still a very achievable road to victory ahead. After a heated standoff that nearly derailed the entire event due to both parties' stubbornness, a deal was finally struck. The Wide Open throttle Mustang would get a 2.5-car head start for the critical second race to try making this a series again. With that tenuous compromise reached, the two teams grudgingly pulled their cars back to the staging lanes, knowing the heat would only keep rising from here. John had made his displeasure and fairness complaints clear, but now it was up to his driver to convert that into results on the racetrack. Both crews went about making their final preparations and gathering data from that first melee in the trenches. Somehow, through all the bickering and disagreements, A path toward an epic, high-stakes competition was starting to take shape. All that was left was to see which team's racecraft and horsepower could prevail under pressure in the arena. With that explosive first race and heated negotiation session out of the way, both teams knew they were in for a battle royale the rest of the way. Olympic Armor had landed the first punch by taking the opening salvo, but Wide Open Throttle was determined to make this a fight until the very last inch. As the cars pulled back to the burnout box for race 2, anticipation and anxiety went high. Olympic Armor's Brandon was riding high after walking away from the Mustang, while John and the Wide Open crew were feeling the mounting pressure to answer back before falling into too deep of a hole. They had extracted that 2.5 car head start in the negotiations, but was it enough? John was convinced Olympic Armor was still detuned and not unleashing the Honda's full potential. Chief, on the other hand, maintained they were simply superior performers with a better hot rod. When the tree turned green for the second race, both cars cleared the line with the Mustang taking full advantage of its hard-fought handicap lead. For a few brief moments, it looked like the heavy Ford might be able to use the extra real estate to its advantage and steal one on the comeback trail. But not so fast. Brandon was a savage behind the wheel of the Honda, and he quickly erased the Mustang's head start with that turbo spooling up and generating brutal acceleration forces. By the time they reached the top end, Olympic Armor's import had reeled in its American pony car prey and nipped it by a diminishing few feet at the stripe. It was a 2-0 hole now for Wide Open Throttle as the frustration started boiling over on their side. John was in full meltdown mode, practically accusing Olympic Armor of manufacturing their entire operation and holding back some invisible boogeyman of horsepower. He was ranting and raving about needing a 15-car head start just to have a faint chance of keeping this competitive. For their part, Chief and Asian's team remained poised and steadfast, essentially accusing John of being a poor sport and refusing to give credit where it was due. They had built a wicked straight-line performer in that Honda, and it wasn't their fault if Wide Open was simply overmatched from the get-go. Thank you for watching. Comment to share what you think in the comment section below. Remember to like and subscribe to see more videos.